to the paint party. My name is Laura and I will be your guide for today's painting, which is a cute scarecrow hanging out in a cornfield. If you are painting along today, check out the description below for all the supplies you will need, pull up an easel, and let's get painting! Using a 3/4 inch flat brush, mix a large scoop of titanium white with a pea-sized amount of ultramarine blue. Add a drop of water to loosen up the paint. Wipe off the excess and fill in the entire canvas. Work in a vertical up-down motion as you go. If you need help getting the paint to slide across the canvas, take your brush, give it a quick dip in the water, and a little dab on your paper towel. Keeping those bristles wet, but not dripping wet, does help the paint to slide more easily across the canvas. As you paint, if you would like to add a streaky effect, every once in a while, pick up a little extra ultramarine blue on your brush and streak it in. Don't overwork the paint. Simply add a few extra streaks and move on. With the background filled in, it's time for a dry break. Rinse your brush, hit pause, and take a break. Come back when the painting has a matte finish. Before painting the scarecrow, use a sharpened pencil with an eraser to draw the outline first. Starting with the head, draw a circle about 2 to 3 inches down from the top edge of the canvas and top it off with a curved, pointy hat. Very lightly, draw a vertical line from the bottom of the head to the bottom of the canvas and use this as your guide for the center line of the body. For the neckline, draw a short, horizontal line about 1 inch below the head. Keep it straight or add an upward curve. From either side of the neckline, draw the arms, which stick out straight on either side, are wider near the body and more narrow towards the hands. Add an outward curve to both the top and bottom lines of the arms so it looks like they are bulging. The body is formed by drawing diagonal lines which start at the inner points of each arm and move down towards the center line of the body. Draw an angled rectangular shape for the sash around the waist with an extra curvy flap on one side to make it look like it is blowing in the breeze. The pants are relatively short, have an inward curve, and a ragged appearance on the bottom. There should be a little bit of space between the pant legs and the bottom edge of the canvas to make room for the post. Finish the scarecrow by drawing 2 vertical parallel lines from below the head to the neck. Continue those lines from below and between the pant legs to the bottom edge of the canvas. Once the scarecrow has been sketched, it's time to paint. Using a 1/2 inch bright brush, mix together roughly 1 part titanium white to 1 part burnt sienna with just a drop of yellow oxide or yellow ochre. Add a drop of water to loosen up the paint if needed. Wipe off the excess. And use this paint to fill in the body. Hold your brush perpendicularly to the canvas to paint with the edge of the bristles for the outline and any smaller areas. Press down with the full width of the bristles to fill in larger sections. Rinse your brush and switch to a 1/8 inch round brush for the outline. Mix a scoop of burnt sienna with a little drop of water to loosen it up. Twist and pull your brush across your palette to wipe off the excess and bring it to a point, and use the tip of that brush to draw the outline. Trace all the way around the arms and body or leave a few spots blank. Steady your hand on the canvas, making sure not to stick it in any wet paint. If the paint does not slide easily, mix in a little bit more water with your paint. Use the tip of the brush and very light pressure as you fill in the outline. While you are working on the outline, you may also add a couple of extra squiggly little lines coming up from the ends of each arm. To add some shadows, pick up a little burnt sienna, wipe off the excess, then dip your brush in the water and dab it on a paper towel. Do this 2 or 3 times to water down the paint that is on your brush. You may use a 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch round brush for this step, depending on how big you want your shadows to be. Very lightly paint along the sides and bottom of the body and the bottom of each arm. If your shadows are too light, you can always add a second coat. If they're too dark, you may want to rinse your brush really quickly and go back and trace along those shadows while they are still wet in order to thin out the paint a little bit. Feel free to repeat this process with a little watered down white paint to add any highlights to the tops of the arms or the center of the body. Once your body is filled in, rinse your brush and switch to adding the straw coming out of the arms and around the neck. Using a 1/8 inch round brush, mix roughly 2 parts yellow oxide to 1 part titanium white. Add a drop of water to loosen up the paint. Wipe off the excess, and use the tip of the brush to draw some curvy, wiggly lines coming out the end of each arm. To add some contrast, add a few lines here and there using burnt sienna. For even more contrast, rinse your brush and add some extra lines using white paint. For the fringe along the neckline, continue to use the 1/8 inch round brush and yellow-white mix to add some curvy lines that stick straight out on either side of the neck and move down in front of the body. Give those lines a little bit of a wiggle or a wave as you go. As with the straw hands, add a little contrast by adding a few little lines with burnt sienna and also in white. Clean your brush and mix a scoop of bright red with a little bit of titanium white. It should still look red, not pink, but that tiny little bit of titanium white will help the paint to be more opaque and less transparent. Mix in a drop of water to loosen up the paint, wipe the excess off your brush, and fill in both sections of the sash. While working on the flap, use the tip of the brush to add a few extra thin streaks coming out at the end for tassels. In order for the flap on the side to stand out, use your dirty brush to pick up a little bit of titanium white and brush that along the top section of the flap. You may also want to add an extra little highlight across the midsection of the part of the scarf that is wrapped around the waist. To add the outline and the shadow, clean your brush and mix a tiny drop of Ultramarine Blue and Burnt Sienna in with that red-white mix to create a darker shade of red. As with previous steps, add a drop of water to loosen up the paint before wiping off the excess and working with the tip of the brush. Hold your brush steady and trace along the outline. If the paint doesn't look too much darker than the previous red used, add a little extra burnt sienna to the mix. Take your brush, dip it in the water, dab on your paper towel, maybe do that twice. Use that somewhat watered down dark red paint to add a little shadow on the part of the scarf that is just below and behind that flap. At this point, the body should be dry. Continue to use that red paint and 1/8 inch round brush to paint a little square patch on the body of the scarecrow. Using a 1/4 inch round brush, mix roughly 2 parts chrome yellow to 1 part bright red with just a little bit of titanium white. Add a drop of water, wipe off the excess, and fill in the head. If the orange paint looks a little see-through, add a bit more white, or let that first coat dry before adding a second coat. With the head filled in, rinse off your brush and switch back to the 1/8 inch round brush to add some more red to your orange. Wipe off the excess and use this darker shade of red to trace along the outline and add some shadow to the sides and underneath the hat. Keep your hands steady on that canvas. Don't forget to water down the paint before adding the shadow. With the head filled in, take a moment to clean your brush and swap out your paint water for a fresh cup before moving on. Using a 1/8 inch round brush, mix roughly 2 parts Ultramarine Blue to 1 part titanium white with a drop of burnt sienna. This denim blue-gray mix is the base coat for both the pants and the hat. Add a drop of water, wipe off the excess, and follow the contours of the pants and hat as you fill them in. If you need to remix your paint, don't worry if your hat and your pants are not the exact same shade of blue. Give your brush a quick clean, then mix together roughly 2 parts Ultramarine Blue to 1 part Burnt Sienna, and use this darker color for the outline of the pants and hat. Don't forget to mix in a drop of water and to wipe off the excess first. Hold your brush steady and just use the tip of the brush as you trace. Use the same color for the shadows, but be sure to thin out the paint first with a little added water. Add a few shadows to the pant legs under the sash and along the insides of the legs. Depending on how you drew the hat, you may want to add a few shadows to any part that curved in on itself. Clean your brush and use a bit of watered-down white paint to add some highlights to the top of the hat and down the center section of each pant leg. For the post, mix a scoop of titanium white with a scoop of black for a medium gray color. As with previous steps, add a drop of water to loosen up the paint and wipe the excess off your brush. Feel free to adjust the color of the gray. If you want it lighter, add more white. If you want it darker, add more black. Depending on the width of your post, you may use either the 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch round brush to fill it in. For the outline and shadow, pick up a tiny bit of black paint on the tip of your dirty brush, then wipe off the excess. Using the very tip of that brush, carefully trace along the outer lines of the post. If the paint does not slide easily, add a little drop of water to it. Water down whatever residual black paint you have left on that 1/8 inch round brush and use that to add a shadow just under the head and below and between the pant legs. You may also want to add a little outline or shadow on the part of the post that is just above the neckline. Clean your brush and use some watered-down white paint to add the highlights down the center of each section of the post. For the hat, move back to the orange color and paint a little square patch on the top using the 1/8 inch round brush. Rinse your brush and pick up a scoop of black paint. Add a drop of water. Then pull and twist your brush across the edge of the palette to bring it to a point. Use the tip of the brush to outline and fill in the underside of the hat. Continue with the same brush and paint to draw the face. Ovals for the eyes, a triangle for the nose, and a curvy little smile for the mouth. Hold that brush steady as you go and just use the very tip of the brush. Once the face is finished, clean your brush thoroughly and take a moment to swap out your paint water and maybe get some fresh paper towels before moving on to the corn. If you are inclined to post your work in progress to social media, I am on Instagram at Tiny Artwork. Please feel free to tag me in all your painting posts. For the corn, continue using your 1/8 inch round brush and mix roughly equal parts Cobalt Blue and Chrome Yellow with a tiny touch of Titanium White. Add a drop of water and wipe off the excess before you paint your stalks. From the bottom of the canvas, press down firmly as you begin your vertical line that ends near the top of the scarecrow. Release the pressure as you go so the line is a little thinner on the top than it is on the bottom. If the paint does not slide easily across the canvas, add a bit more water to it and trace over the stalk again. If you use a flat brush instead of a round brush, remember to hold that brush perpendicularly to the canvas so you just use the edge of the bristles. You may also start at the top of the stalk with very light pressure and then add more pressure as you work your way down towards the bottom. Use the 1/8 inch round brush and green paint for the leaves. Press down firmly as you begin and release the pressure as you go. Move up and away from the stalk, then turn your brush to move down in the opposite direction. Stagger the leaves on either side and add as many as you like in varying sizes and curvatures. To add a few ears of corn peeking out from behind some of the leaves, add a few almond-like shapes along the stalk. Add a few extra leaves to each ear of corn, following the same basic principle as before. Press down firmly at the base, then lift up with your brush as you move along. These leaves will be smaller than the main leaves. For the tassels, use your dirty brush to pick up a little yellow oxide. Wipe off the excess, and use the tip of that 1/8 inch round brush to draw a few little thin streaks at the top of the stalk and at the top of each ear of corn. To add some shadows, give your brush a quick clean, then mix a scoop of green with a scoop of Cobalt Blue. The exact ratio is not so important as making sure that new shade of green is darker than what's already on the canvas. Add that little drop of water, wipe off the excess, and use the tip of that brush to draw a few little streaks in dark green along the undersides of the leaves, the bases of the ears of corn, and one side of the stalk. Rinse your brush and mix together roughly equal parts titanium white and chrome yellow with a little bit of that original green. This is our highlight color. Once again, wipe off the excess. Brush along the top parts of the leaves, the opposite sides of the stalk, and the top or center parts of each ear of corn. Repeat this entire process to add as many stalks of corn as you like in varying sizes around your scarecrow. For the grass, continue to use the 1/8 inch round brush in green paint to add brush strokes of varying sizes at the base of the post and corn stalks. Make them long and curvy, short and straight, or anywhere in between. For added contrast, add a few extra brushstrokes in dark green or cobalt blue and a few extra brushstrokes in light green or chrome yellow mixed with titanium white. To indicate corn stalks growing in the distance, rinse your brush and mix together roughly 2 parts titanium white to 1 part yellow oxide, and use the tip of that 1/8 inch round brush to create vertical lines of varying sizes scattered throughout the background between the stalks of corn and the scarecrow. Finish them off with some tassels on top, a few thin leaves on the side, and grass on the bottom. To add the finishing details, rinse your brush, set it aside, let your canvas dry completely, and use a super fine-tipped black marker to draw some lines around each patch to make it look like they were sewn into the fabric. Use the same marker to indicate a few birds flying in the distance. All you need are a few exaggerated V shapes. And that is the last detail based on our reference. Feel free to add any other personal details or touch-ups before taking that final step and signing your name. If you are inclined to post to social media, I am on Instagram @tinyartwork. Please tag me so I can see all your wonderful works of art. I hope you had a great time and will join me again. Until then, happy painting!